I want to ask you, let's flip the card and talk a little bit about the 49ers on the other side of the football. This is Alex Smith from earlier today, I believe, talking about Brock Purdy. Purdy, by the way, for those who don't know, I believe is second in the NFL right now in QBR or something like that.
Yeah, Josh Allen's first.
Yeah, he leads the NFC in quarterback rating, I should say, not QBR. And he's second in the NFL, 105.4 quarterback rating. Here's Alex Smith, who knows a little something about quarterback as well, on Purdy.
Absolutely nonsense. As bad as he's been in the last, the talk of Brock Purdy being the problem is absolutely nonsense. As bad as he's been in the last 3 weeks, which again, this is a guy that didn't throw an interception the first 5 weeks. Yes, he's thrown 5 in the last 3 weeks. And I know there's some of them been questionable and the concussion. There's been some goofy things. He's still second in the NFL in QBR. And more importantly, when you turn on the tape, this guy routinely makes ridiculous plays in the passing game. Look routine. Exactly that. Like he does it week in and week out. There are multiple pass plays every single week that you look at that are like, man, this guy is a 6-year, 7-year veteran. Like he's playing at that level. And I think sometimes we unfairly compare him to those guys. We unfairly compare him to where Dak Prescott is and Jalen Hurts and some of these guys that he's going to have to play in the NFC. We don't forget, listen, what has he played? 13 games, right? Like his real comparisons are Pickett and Ritter and Malik Willis and Matt Corral and Sam Howell. Like these are the guys that he got drafted with that were drafted ahead of him. And he is light years ahead of them. He is not the problem. They're going to get Debo back. They're hopefully going to get Trent Williams back. Like that's going to help. For me, far more question marks about this defense, but I still think they're going to get figured out. They're too good. I love that they added Chase Young here to kind of solidify that defensive front. I think he's going to add to it. I think they're going to get it dialed in. Problem is they've kind of dug themselves a little hole, certainly to try to go get that bye, the number 1 seed in the bye. I mean, the Eagles obviously a couple of games out in front, and that's obviously such a big advantage come January.
All right, a little bit of Alex Smith. I love Alex Smith just because I think he's very cerebral. He's an independent thinker, but he really hits on the fact that, people do compare Purdy to all these guys that have way more experience, and he's right. I mean, if you really compared him to the young quarterbacks that he came out with, he's so far ahead of them, you wouldn't even make the comparison. But I think one of the things that is key is Jacksonville, if you look at their defense, Chase, they've allowed the fewest explosive plays in the NFL. And they play a lot of zone, as you mentioned. So I think in this game, Brock Purdy's going to have to show increased patience. I think he was a little impatient against Minnesota, a little impatient at times against Cincinnati. He's going to have to just manage the game, show a little bit more patience. And I think Shanahan needs to show a little bit more patience, not only for the effectiveness of the offense. I think if the 49er defense is going to have a revival, it's going to take more than Chase Young. It's going to take the Niners playing complementary football on the offensive side and giving their defense a little bit of a break and trying to possess the ball for a few more minutes just to keep that defense on the sidelines. Right now, Bosa has been averaging over 60 snaps a game the last 3 weeks. They got to bring that number down.
Yeah, and I'm usually a fan of if you win the coin toss to defer. I think that it can be a complete momentum changer. If you score at the end of the half, then you get the ball to start the third quarter. If I'm San Francisco, you're coming out of the bye. Kyle Shanahan is really good coming off the script. You've had an opportunity to kind of survey and scan what you've done well and what you haven't done well. I would debate taking the ball first in this game to try to set the tone and set the momentum of this football game. And if you can score first, I think everybody's concerns offensively, they ease up a little bit, and the Niners won't play as tense. And we know that when they can dictate the pace and when they can play from ahead and they can get that ground game going, the entire offense is able to open up. So I think that's an interesting strategical decision that maybe San Francisco is thinking of here. And for Purdy, look, I wanted to get into sports broadcasting when I was 5 years old because when I was like 4 or 5, I just saw this unique way that sports brought people together. And then once September 11th happened, you really got to look at that. And it's special, right? But fan stands for fanatic. And I think fans are overreacting a little bit to Purdy struggling during this 3-game losing streak. Keep in mind that he played poorly against Cleveland. It's one of the best defenses in the NFL, and Jim Schwartz has owned Kyle Shanahan. But Brock Purdy led the Niners down to a point in which Jake Moody missed a chip shot field goal from 40 plus. And I thought Shanahan did a bad job of managing that situation where he could have gained a few more yards with time and timeouts at his disposal to make that field goal easier. But point being, if the Niners win that game, Brock Purdy is credited with an incredible comeback drive against Cleveland. For the first 3 quarters against Minnesota, he played flawless football. The two interceptions were bad, but did that happen after he was concussed? Keep that in mind as well. And then against Cincinnati, he was slinging the rock, balling out, making some incredible throws against that Bengals team, which also is a very good defensive unit and has a defensive coordinator who's had multiple head coaching interviews. So in the last 8 quarters, I think that Purdy has played very good to elite football in 6 of them. But when you give the ball away in the 4th quarter, that's when casual fans are watching. That's when everybody is watching. That's when the pressure cooker is certainly alive, and Purdy has not performed well in the 4th quarter. Shout out to him for taking accountability. He addressed the entire team in a meeting saying, I've messed up. I know I've turned the football over. But I was talking earlier, and we were talking earlier about film study and how context is important. If you go back and look at some of the throws that he made against Minnesota, against Cincinnati, some of the throws on that final drive against the Browns, he is making some deep out route throws, which are very difficult throws to make. The seam balls that he was throwing in particular against the Bengals to George Kittle and Brandon Ayuk downfield with touch, accuracy, feel, anticipation, layering those balls in there 20, 25 yards down the field, having to find a keyhole with some of those throws accuracy-wise. Those are high-level throws. So I think those are some of the plays that Alex Smith is talking about. Does he have to play better in the 4th quarter? There's no doubt about that. Has the defense done him any favors? No, because they can't get off the field, and that has made the Niners in turn a one-dimensional offense where they've become more pass-happy when they like to be a more balanced team. At least that's when they're at their best. So Purdy has kind of been put in an unfair situation as well. Debo coming back helps. Trent Williams coming back potentially, if he does play, will certainly help as well. The sky is falling in the Bay Area right now. And I know that the 3-game losing streak looks bad, but I do think that all of these things are fixable. Also keep in mind that in 2021, this team started off 3-5. Last year, they were 3-4. This year, they're 5-3. They earned that wiggle room, and now they have that wiggle room to kind of get things right the back half of the year. This is a team that does have some mental fortitude, as they've shown. I think during this losing streak, they've kind of been a soft and fraudulent team, but they have the guys in the clubhouse to kind of turn this thing around. And offensively, early in this game, I think is really going to tell an important story, going back to my original point of taking the ball first potentially.